Hi, everybody. Welcome to Great Books, Big Ideas. I'm Jim. Wanted to do a reading update for today. It's Saturday, December 6th, 2025. And we just got our first snowfall of the season. It's flurrying. It's getting a little dusting of snow out there. It's really nice to see some winter weather out there and enjoying that a lot. So I want to catch you all up on what I've been reading, books I finished, books I'm actively reading. And we'll start with I guess you'd call it sort of like a graphic novel, comics style book called Dark Garbage by Jon-Michael Frank. Jon-Michael Frank, who has since changed their name, and I can't remember what their name is now. It's kind of like encoded. But anyway, this book, Dark Garbage, was published in 2019, and I found it at one of my local used bookshops, and I was pleasantly surprised to see it in there. This is a comics artist and just an artist who is on Instagram. I'll throw a link to their Instagram page. They write these very witty comics and in a very primitive style. And I got to know Jon-Michael because through this podcast that I once did called Pagula Rasa, we interviewed him because he went to my high school. Jon-Michael is a lot younger than I am, but we shared one thing in common. We had the same creative writing teacher, Tom Williams, who was a big influence on my life and on so many other people's lives at Marple Newtown High School. Anyway, we had a really nice interview with him. And then this was during the COVID time. Like, he happened to be in the area, and he actually stopped by for a visit. So we had a really pleasant afternoon. He met my wife and my dog and my cat, and we spent some time out here on the deck chatting. And it was he was like checking out my books and my records, and it was a fun time. And anyway, so I was. Dark Garbage, this book is not the kind of thing you typically see in a bookstore. So I was really, really happy to find it. So I picked it up. I can't show the book to you because I've already given it away. My daughter came in from Vermont for Thanksgiving week, and we did some gift exchanges because they're probably not going to be coming down for Christmas time. And this is the kind of thing that they might like. So I was like, I did read the book first. It's in really good condition, and then I just gifted it to them. So what is this book about? Well, it's literally a series of strips, but it follows a woman bodybuilder by the name of Esther and a caged butterfly, Mona, and they kind of have little Gen Y fantasy adventures. They are sort of despairing types of characters, and they have some journeys and looking for beauty and truth in the sort of mundane world that we live in. And they come across a whole panoply of characters that are sort of poetic and melancholic and destructive by various degrees, and sometimes tender. So what I really like about Jon-Michael's work is his wit, and the drawing style is maybe a little too primitive for my taste. I wish it was a little less primitive, very crude, simplistic, but the things that they sneak in, the little details in the panels are very funny and witty and sarcastic and lots of satire. And you look for the Easter eggs in those panels, as it were. And it was a quick read. It was a fun read. It is dark. It's definitely dark and melancholic and sort of existentialist in its approach. But one of my favorite part of the book was like how he interspersed these text pages where they were just like prose poetry, observational, descriptive, and absurdist, sort of surreal And there was some really, really good writing in there. Like, this is a person who has a great eye with great juxtapositions of images. Those were really my favorite parts of the book. So that's Dark Garbage by who was once known, the artist formerly known as Jon-Michael Frank. And like I said, I'll put a link to the podcast that we did with them a number of years ago. I'll put it in the show description, and I'll link to their Instagram page. So that was the one book I breezed through really quickly. I also finished this book, continuing like some of my religious thread books, The Way of a Pilgrim, and The Pilgrim Continues His Ways, Spiritual Classics from Russia. And this is all about praying without ceasing. And it tells you how to do the Jesus prayer. The Jesus prayer is, in a nutshell, they do a very simplified version of it in here. It just goes like this. Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. Variants you see will be, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner, and things like that. And the idea is just to repeat this like throughout your day as a contemplative, as a meditative practice. There's instructions here about coupling it with your meditative breathing. It reminded me of a lot of meditation practices that you see in like Eastern meditations. And I've always meant to read this because I first heard about The Way of a Pilgrim from this book, Franny and Zooey, by J.D. Salinger, a book I love. It's, I guess you would call it a novel, but it's really two stories. One is shorter and the other is longer. And it really tells the story of the Glass family and focusing on Franny and Zooey, two of the younger members of that family. Franny, the girl, Zooey, the boy, young man. And Franny is having she's in college, she's having relationship difficulties, and in the Franny story, she really gets to the point of a nervous breakdown. And then in the Zooey story, this is after she's had her nervous breakdown. She's back home from college, maybe taking an extended leave of absence. I can't remember exactly, but she's being taken care of in the Manhattan apartment of the Glass family. And the mom is there, and Zooey, the brother, who's, got a lot of attitude. They're in their halting way trying to help her get through this. And Franny is really a wreck. And she's constantly seen mumbling the Jesus prayer. And this becomes a topic of conversation between the brother and the sister. So that's where I first heard about it. And at first, I didn't know if this was an invention of J.D. Salinger, but no, it's not an invention at all. It's absolutely a thing. And I used to teach this book. I taught it maybe about 3 times. And I remember one time we were going over the Jesus prayer stuff, that section. And after class, this Greek kid came up, and he pulls out his wallet and he takes out a card and he's like, I always carry this with me. And it was the Jesus prayer. So this is a big deal in the Orthodox Christian community. And this book, The Way of a Pilgrim, comes out of the Russian Orthodox tradition. Now, this particular volume was translated by Helen Bakovkin, with a foreword by Walter J. Cizik, and it was published by, who published this? Image Books, Doubleday, an imprint of Doubleday Books, was published. This particular edition was printed around 1992. The copyright of the translation is 1978. So I don't know if this has been superseded by newer translations or not, but I thought this was a fine translation. I got a lot out of it, and it's really a pilgrim story. So we've got this pilgrim just wandering from town to town throughout like Russia and Ukraine, and going from cities to towns and getting into different situations, and very spiritually minded, and is really taking the idea of the biblical instruction in the New Testament. I think it was St. Paul who said you should pray without ceasing. What does that mean? Well, this is what he explores, and he learns the Jesus prayer, and he tries to practice it, and he has all kinds of encounters with different individuals, and he also has a book that he gets a lot of spiritual advice from. I'll see if I can pull out the name of it. It's a Greek name. It's mentioned throughout. The Philokalia or Philokalia is the book that is like also his spiritual guide in addition to reading on the Bible. But it's mainly focused on the Jesus prayer. So I thought it was really informative and something that I've been trying as part of my lately my meditation practice. Just to, it makes you want to try it as a method, and I think it's a worthwhile read if you're into different spiritual traditions. This one maybe should be part of your library. So that was the way of really two works, The Way of a Pilgrim, and then The Pilgrim Continues His Way. And there's an appendix with some additional instructional material from different thinkers from the Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox tradition. I also finished this book, Chaos, Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s. We go from, the sublime to the ridiculous and the criminal here. But I did a whole video review of this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it here. I'll link to it in the show description. Real page turner. And if you're into true crime, I think this might be up your alley. And also, what else have I been reading? I've read books 1 and 2 of Rabelais, the Gargantua and Pantagruel. And I'm going to be doing a 10-year reading plan video very soon about those first 2 books. It was about 125 pages of reading from that great novel. And boy, what a rollicking good time that stuff is. That is way out there. But I'll reserve comments on that until I do that video. So stay tuned for it. Also, I mentioned this on the channel a couple weeks ago, Strangers and Brothers by C.P. Snow. This is a suite of 11 novels, and I'm in the first novel, Time of Hope. And just a quick update on how that's going. I really like it. It's just very easy to read, straightforward, realism, British fiction, 20th century. He's kind of taking us through those early 20th century years, and we're following Lewis, what's his last name? Eliot, right? I hope I have his name, remember it right. And he's growing up and coming of age, and now he's got his sights set on being a lawyer, and he's studying for the bar exam, and he's beginning some romantic involvements. And it's just, I read a chapter or 2 or 3 almost every night at bedtime, and it's going really well. I'm really glad I bought this omnibus edition. I'm slowly making my way through The Great Ideas Today, 1971. These are supplements to the great books of the Western world. These there was a super long article about plate tectonics and geology, and I finally got through that. And it was, a lot of the writing in these volumes tends to be dry and academic. I mean, they're trying to write it for a general audience, but it's like a couple notches above my head. in some of these articles, but you can learn a lot about things. And there were passages in that were quite interesting. So I finally got through that. Now I'm currently reading an article about civil disobedience, which was written by Marshall Cohen. So eventually I'll get through that. I'm not reading the additions to the Great Books Library that they tack on to the end of these volumes, but I will get around to those someday. And then I forget what year I'm up to in my series of Great Ideas Today. I think I'm around 1968, 69 or so. So I got to do one of those videos pretty soon. Also, I'm slogging my way through, well, I guess I'm over halfway through now, The Recognitions by William Gaddis. This is not for the faint of heart. Like, this is some difficult reading. I often get lost in it, and yet it strikes me as like pretty cool stuff. There's enough here to keep me going. I just wish I could make steadier progress through it. Other books kind of jumped the line on this one, but I keep coming back to it. And I think I'll finish this probably in early 2026, just knowing my current reading pace. I'll probably finish it in January or February, and I'll do a review of it at that time. What else? I'm continuing to read St. Augustine, City of God, which is a really long book, but I'm making some headway in that. I think I'm up to around book 19 or something. And then I'm trying to finish the Confessions by Augustine too. I did books 1 through 8 of the Confessions for my 10-year reading plan series. And then I just decided to keep going. So I'm currently reading the long chapter or book on where he's talking a lot about memory. It's the real shift in the book. His life story kind of ends around book 8, and then it's much more talking about philosophy and theology pretty much through the rest of it. But there's a lot of interest there for sure. So another book that I'm actively reading, again, is The World is Will and Idea by Artur Schopenhauer, German philosopher. I'm making very slow progress. I've been reading this book probably now for a year and a half, 2 years. There's only so much of this you can take in one sitting. And yet, when I do read it by and large, I'd say about 75% of the time makes sense to me. And I find it it resonates with me at some level. I'm not going to make any final critiques on it till I get through the whole thing, but it's a major work of philosophy. I'm kind of surprised people don't talk more about Schopenhauer. Like, they talk about Hegel, they talk about Nietzsche, and in between those is Schopenhauer, who in a lot of ways I think is maybe more compatible with at least my outlook on things a lot of the time. I mean, Nietzsche is pretty much like, he's the best writer of those three, but he's a madman. I mean, the guy literally went crazy, and yet he's like looked up to as this, great philosopher. Well, you do just keep in mind he did go nuts. And one has to maybe reserve some judgment when it comes to Nietzsche. And Hegel, just to me, is impenetrable. Like, he had a great influence on Marx, who makes a lot more sense to me, Marx and Engels. And I did start Hegel's Phenomenology of Mind or Phenomenology of Spirit. I forget the title. And didn't get very far. So, but I'm not totally giving up on Hegel, but I think that, he's definitely on the back burner. Schopenhauer makes more sense to me. Like, Schopenhauer is more he's not a Hegel fan. In fact, Schopenhauer, I think, taught at the same university as Hegel. Hegel was the super popular professor, so his lectures were filled. Schopenhauer would schedule his classes to meet at the same time as Hegel, so there were times when he might only have like 3 students in his lecture hall, whereas Hegel was like, filled. And so he's more owes a debt to Kant. I think he's more of an adversary to Hegel. He talks about Plato a lot in this book too, but reading a lot about the will, not the will to power. As Nietzsche sort of borrowed Schopenhauer's concept of the will and extended it, more qualified it, or put his own stamp on it and called it the will to power. For Schopenhauer, the will is just this sort of universal force that governs everything. And I'm not going to try to summarize it because, like I said, at least 25% of it I don't get. But something keeps bringing me back, and I guess I'm over halfway through, just barely. And, I'm not rushing through it, let's put it that way. But that's Schopenhauer. But this is a book that I just picked up. I found it on the shelf. I was in the basement, doing some reshelving. And this is John Steinbeck, Travels with Charlie. This is a 1966 printing, paperback. This was my mother's copy. She's got it signed here on the inside cover. And I was just talking about Mom in a previous video. And this is a travel writing book. And I've always meant to read it. So now I am. I started it this morning. It looks perfectly decent. I think this will not take me long to get through. So that's like the new one on the stove. And that's pretty much my wrap up for the week. What have you all been reading? Have you finished any books this week? Do you have thoughts on these volumes? Let me know in the show description. Thanks all.